Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks a lot for joining us. My name is Danny Wayne from Travel Nomads.
And I'm Daniel Hyman from Marcus Whitefield.
Thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day to join us for the launch of our Travel Trade Insights Report, TTIR for short. This is the first time that we've launched the report. It will be an annual report going forward. And Daniel and I are here today to tell you more about it, what's included, and why you might want to get access to it. So first of all, for those who don't know me, my name is Danny, founder of Travel Nomads, which is a remote-based B2B consultancy business working with travel entrepreneurs to help them succeed in the travel and tourism industry. And I'll hand over to Daniel to tell us a bit more about what he does.
So my name is Daniel Hyman. I run Marcus Whitefield, which is a market intelligence and strategy firm for travel and tourism businesses. Our goal is simple: to help businesses be really clear on who their target customer is and why they win them. And bringing this together with Danny, we really felt there was a natural overlap between what we were doing, and we really wanted to bring our skill sets together to address that question, which is, what is the UK travel trade? Danny and I came together to help people understand what the UK travel trade is and demystify a lot of those terms that people keep hearing that suggest a complexity that is very real. But if you understand what is happening, your strategies can be even more successful.
Absolutely. And we wanted to use our background and experience in and around the travel and tourism industry. So from my perspective, I've got more than 20 years experience now working directly in the travel industry across travel agencies, tour operators, and suppliers to those businesses as well. And our skills, I would say, complement each other. Daniel, I know your background is different to mine. Do you want to just tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so my background is management consulting and strategy. So I led the customer strategy team for a major retail bank here in the UK. In between that and this, I also have run and have a travel agency. The benefit of that is really understanding how the sale of travel works in the UK, and bringing that to life with real life case studies throughout Travel Trade Insights.
Now, we'd love to make the session interactive. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask those as we go along. You can pop those in the comments or the chat, depending on where you're watching the webinar. We are recording this webinar, the live version of it, and we'll have it on demand. So if you are watching it back on demand, please feel free to still ask any questions or add your comments or thoughts as we're going along. And Daniel and I will keep an eye on those as we go forward too. We have already had a number of questions pre-submitted from people across the industry, which is excellent. So we're going to pick a few of those up as we go through. So you're probably wondering, what is the Travel Trade Insights Report? Well, it's the inside view on the UK outbound leisure travel sector, which we refer to as the travel trade. And it's really for suppliers who want to develop relationships and build a strong winning sales strategy. So some of the questions to think about as we're going through today's session are along the lines of, are you clear on how to succeed in the UK outbound leisure travel sector? Would you like clarity on the structure of tour operators and travel agency distribution channels across the UK? We're hopefully going to bring to life the differences between them, but also the nuances and how interlinked they all are. Would you like to understand the market trends, identify opportunities, and also potential new partners to work with in the UK? So if you're working on a B2B basis with travel agencies or tour operators, maybe there are more companies out there and individuals that you might like to partner with. There may be new businesses that you're not actually even familiar with or aware of at the moment. So we'd like to bring that to you too. Do you want to prioritize and strengthen B2B relationships that can help you deliver your sales plan, not only in 2026, but also well beyond that in the future as well? So that's what the Travel Trade Insights Report is really all about. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of the detail just to give you some context to the report. So Daniel, would you like to tell us a bit more about the word package? It's a word that we hear a lot about in the travel trade, but it's got different meanings to different people. So if you want to give us a bit more background on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So package is one of those words that's very misunderstood. When you test it out with kind of the average consumer, they associate package with your fly and flop holiday where you go to a beach resort, usually with Jet2 holidays after that now famous jingle of nothing beats a Jet2 holiday, and you sit on the beach all day and then fly back home. That's what people associate with it. However, at the center of this is the package travel regulations, previously an EU regulation, now a UK regulation. They're broadly the same in terms of what a package is. So a package is a combination of any form of carriage of passengers, which includes flights, with any nights of stay in accommodation. There are other variants of a package, and we do go into that in the report. But if you think of a package as being any combination of a flight and a hotel, it's quite easy to see that pretty much any holiday you can think of, particularly departing from the United Kingdom, which is located on the British Isles and therefore typically requires a flight to get anywhere, is going to be a package. So given everything is a package, that creates regulations and rules that define the different roles in the industry. What makes the UK different from the EU, though, in terms of the actual regulatory environment, is the ATOL scheme. So when you combine a flight with a hotel in a package, it falls under the UK's ATOL regulations. And the UK is very clear on this. There are no loopholes. If you include a flight in a package, the person selling the trip has to be an ATOL holder approved by the UK's Civil Aviation Authority. So what this ultimately means is that there's very clearly defined roles in the UK of tour operator and travel agent. And we set that out incredibly clearly in the Travel Trade Insights report to make sure that you understand what role your B2B partners are actually doing, and therefore whether they can buy from you or whether they buy from somebody else who buys from you, and all the various different levels that we can see.
So are you saying that the UK market operates differently to the EU, the US, and other large outbound source markets? Would that be a true assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. So compared to, say, the European Union, the package travel rules are broadly identical. However, because of the requirement to be part of this ATOL scheme, if you include a flight, there are additional responsibilities on those who sell trips with flights, and that's what's different with the European Union. And yes, compared to America, the environment is completely different. There is no equivalent package travel regulations in the United States. However, there are seller of travel regulations that we don't have in the UK, but we kind of have an equivalent because the ATOL scheme defines who can and can't sell travel. So given how different the rules are between the UK, the EU, and the US, Danny, who do you think this report is really for?
Yeah, the report is really for those who want to up their game when it comes to B2B sales, so improving relationships, increasing sales predominantly from the UK. No doubt it'll help them in different ways too. So really for hoteliers, visitor attractions, and tourist boards that are looking to attract more guests from the UK market, I would say first and foremost. Also suppliers who are wanting to sell their services to tour operators and travel agencies as well. Fintech companies, FX businesses, PR, legal, all of those really important and associated types of businesses that live within the travel and tourism ecosystem. And the reason I say that is because the report helps you to build your knowledge in terms of the UK travel and tourism industry. It also will open your eyes to businesses that might not exist, and also some of the trends as well that you may not be totally familiar with. Beyond that, I think from an educational perspective, entrepreneurs, those that are new to the travel industry too, that are looking to get into the industry, maybe start a business or have recently started a business and are looking to develop their understanding and find ways that they can help to grow. And then also from an educational perspective, students, graduates, colleges, universities, lecturers that are interested in travel and tourism, anyone kind of in and around that space should certainly be able to take something from the report and learn something that they didn't already know.
And we've had a question in here. This one is from Adrian, who is based out in Fuerteventura. So he said most of the guests at our hotel are from the United Kingdom. Therefore, he can really see the need for the report. Do we think there could be some destinations where people read the report and realise the UK travel trade maybe is not for them?
Yes, that could well be the case. It will depend on where in the world you are, what your product looks like, the type of offer and experience that you have. Also, how easy it is to get from the UK, as you mentioned earlier. We're a collection of islands, predominantly fly to destinations, love beaches, love cities, love touring and experiences, cruise and so on. But yeah, not necessarily for everyone. And so if actually you read through the report, you learned something, and the outcome was that actually the UK market isn't necessarily where I should be spending as much of my time, resources and efforts, that's also not necessarily a bad outcome. If that helps you to actually quantify where you should be focusing your time to try and get the maximum return, then yeah, absolutely, it would be well worth investing into this and to reading through the report fully. But if it opens a different conversation, if you look at it a different way around, it might be you need to rethink the product that you offer and tailor it a bit more to the UK consumer. That could be a different way of taking it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I wanted to add is, from a strategy perspective, it's really interesting when you see people selling a tourism or travel product without fully understanding the UK travel trade. So what I think our report does, but also what is really important, is if you're going to sell via tour operators and travel agents, do you really understand what their commercial drivers are, what their UK audience wants, and therefore know how best to position your product with them? And therefore, some people might read the report and realize, actually, we've got to tweak, exactly as you said, to get the best impact. Some would say, okay, maybe there isn't a big market for us here. But others say, actually, hang on a second, we've been overlooking this great opportunity that if we become known by the UK travel trade, that we're going to build this great network of tour operators and travel agents and have 10, 100,000 voices saying, if you want to come to this destination, this is the product that you need to stay at. And actually with that, I think we just had another question in, and this one's from Damien. And Damien's asked, are we seeing particular destinations come up as themes through where the UK consumer wants to go?
Beach destinations, that's still a huge part of the UK market, particularly in the summer. The winter time, ski is of course still a big kind of large specialism, if you like, a large niche that we have within the travel sector. Cruise has been growing over the years, both ex-UK cruise and also fly cruise to the Med, the Canaries, the Caribbean as a few examples. Touring as well is an area that's got a lot more focus in recent years, both through kind of a B2C lens, but also B2B and travel agents and tour operators focusing on that. And then there are a whole range of other areas as well. So we have specialist tour operators that focus on educational trips for universities and colleges, both educational and cultural, but as well as experiential too. In terms of destinations, long haul, you've got a lot of the places that UK consumers can easily get to, whether that's through a direct flight or via an easy connection. Of course, 2026 has been severely impacted by the events in the Middle East, so that will no doubt have an impact on where travellers are travelling to through this kind of 12-month period. But we're confident that that will bounce back going forward once everything settles down.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at the volume of flights out of the UK, because we get asked the question from Damien. I think we get asked this all the time, right? What trends are we seeing on destinations? And when we look purely at the kind of the airlift numbers, so the amount of flights out the UK, that Spain is the number one destination, continues to be the number one destination, and in particular the Canary Islands. So although we do see trends, so you'll hear, Japan is in at the moment, and what that practically means is a couple of 100,000 people are going to Japan. That actually we're seeing people in their millions upon millions going to Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece as the kind of the top kind of destinations, and that never really seems to change. So it doesn't mean if you're not in one of those destinations, you can't win a good share from UK travel trade. It just means that if you are in those destinations, the likelihood is the UK is potentially 20 to 50% of your market, and an amazing opportunity for you to really understand the UK travel trade and potentially get 50% of your customers from the UK travel trade.
Connected to that, a real change in the types of ATOL holders. So those tour operators that are operating from the UK, but going back sort of 25, 30 years ago, there were a lot of really focused destination specialists that would operate to countries like Cyprus, Greece, maybe to Italy or the Canaries and so on, that were really specific on the destination that they sold. Nowadays, those specialist tour operators have changed and they've moved away from being destination specialists to more product-led, and they've broadened their portfolio. So yes, they may still have a real specialism in somewhere like Cyprus, but they've expanded beyond and maybe added in the Greek islands. Or if they're operating to North Africa, that they started with one particular country that they were sending UK travellers to, and have expanded beyond that within the region. So that's certainly been a trend, which I think all of these are linked in ways when it comes to, as you mentioned, Daniel, with those flights, the flight capacity out of the UK can kind of lead us in that direction. But also from a business perspective, de-risking the business, diversifying the portfolio are all things that sensible business decisions that companies are making. So from a supplier perspective, it's thinking about how can I engage with those businesses and try and work more closely with them to develop my sales in a sustainable way.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you say the word risk, because I think actually risk is really key here in how we define the UK travel trade. So we talked earlier about the packages and the ATOL scheme. Ultimately, what those regulations really say is if you're the person selling the flight plus the hotel to the customer, you take performance responsibility for that flight and for that hotel and for all elements that you put in that package. And taking that performance responsibility really means the UK travel trade needs to be confident in its supplier partners that they're going to deliver what they say they deliver. And that's part of the reason why understanding the UK travel trade, if you want to sell to them, is important, because what we sometimes see is almost a concentration in that everybody's talking about or using the same supplier, but it's back to that point of risk and trust. Like, you trust that partner is going to deliver what they say they deliver. And it's also that same performance responsibility that, just as Danny's been talking about with these destination specialists, that one bad season in a destination can wipe out a tour operator purely because the tour operator is responsible to the customer for that trip from the performance. And if the customers can't get to that destination because of natural disaster or all these other elements that can occur in one specific destination, they suddenly find that in that season, they've had to refund all the customers going there. So what we've therefore seen is this is that specialists tend to specialize more thematically rather than in one particular destination. It doesn't mean they don't understand and deeply know that destination. It just means that they will typically be, say, for example, if they were a Greek tour operator before focused on Greek islands, while their expertise might actually be island hopping and ferries, and therefore what we're seeing is they therefore have expanded that out to offer other destinations, actually the Canary Islands, where you might do Fuerteventura and Lanzarote, as an example.
Yeah, and the UK is a mature market when it comes to travel. So as much as UK consumers love to travel, if they're in a position to do so, they'll often travel numerous times a year as well. But what we have seen that the market is always evolving, and that's why from Daniel and I's perspective, we're really keen to ensure that this TTIR is an annual report. So yes, this is the first one in 2026, but we'll be back again with the new version in 2027. And that's because the large integrated airline tour operators, they have a lot of the market share at the moment, but even those players are moving around and changing, growing. You have the OTAs that have developed over kind of the last 20, 25 years, particularly as the internet has developed. I think that, it's given them a big opportunity to grow. We've lost large players out of the market, such as the old Thomas Cook, the Monarch Group as well, two of the larger failures from the UK. You've seen those happen as well in other source markets across Europe. And that, along with loads of other reasons, are why each year we intend to keep the report updated, because the figures are changing all the time, the trends are changing all the time. And from a business perspective, you want to be on the front foot and be able to make the most of those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Both on the when we were creating the report together, we started by looking back who the big tour operators were 10 years ago, and the list has no correlation with today. The list of the biggest travel agents from, say, 10, 20 years ago also doesn't correlate with today, which is not to say that people cannot build businesses in this industry and sustain them for the long term, because you absolutely can. And there are some excellent case studies of tour operators who have been around for decades. What we see, though, is that those businesses are really clear on who their target customer is, why they win, and they focus on margin rather than simply chasing volume.
Now we've given some context to the report. Daniel, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of the structure? So what should a reader actually expect to access when they get the report?
Yeah, absolutely. So we begin the report with a level playing field. So we explain the acronyms and the structure of the industry so that you have the context you need to know who the players are and the roles that they take. So that begins with actually explaining what the United Kingdom is, curiously, because although it sounds really silly, the whole industry is structured on contracts that say you can only sell to UK residents. And the number of times we've been at an event and asked, oh, and what about Ireland? And Ireland is a great market, but the UK and Ireland are separate markets. So we do explain that really clearly at the start. I've talked a little bit about the packages and the ATOL scheme. That's ultimately at the core of how you define the industry. So we explain the package travel regulations, we explain the ATOL regulations. And from that, because any flight combined with any hotel is a package and also can only be sold by an ATOL holder, we have a very neat definition of what a tour operator is. A tour operator is the legal entity that is responsible for the performance of that package. In contrast, a travel agent is the agent of the tour operator. So in this language, the tour operator is the buyer from suppliers, and the agent is the agent of the tour operator. Now, in the report, we then explain how you sometimes have tour operators that describe themselves as travel agents or online travel agents. And there's so many acronyms in this industry. We just thoroughly explain things one after the other so that when you walk away from that report, you go, yep, got it, understood who the different players are, what their roles are, and fundamentally, whether or not they can buy from me or if they're a travel agent, whether they can advocate for me. So there's two very distinct roles here. We also get asked a lot about wholesalers, about aggregators, about industry bodies, consortia, host agencies, sub-agents. I mean, what does this person mean that they're an ABTA agent, ATOL protected, that they are, a sub-agent of this host agency under this consortia? What you find is people just throw terms at you, but fundamentally, we break this down into how the industry is structured, who the buyers, the tour operators are, and who the people who actually speak to the end customer, the travel agents, are. And sometimes those roles overlap, sometimes they don't, but we just make sure that's really clear. So with that in mind, and there's so many acronyms, Danny, could you possibly explain what ABTA and ATOL are? Because almost every advert that any UK consumer will hear will say, this holiday is ABTA and ATOL protected. And people go, great. They say, I trust that more, but they have no idea what it means.
Yeah, so ABTA is the Travel Association, which is a membership organisation for travel agencies and tour operators. The acronym came from the historic Association of British Travel Agencies, which is where the organisation started. And over time, that's developed to welcome tour operators and travel agencies into membership. As I say, it's a membership organisation. It's one of the Department for Business and Trade approved bodies, one of several. So you also have ABTOT, you also have ATO that provide their financial protection scheme as well. And that's on the bonding side of things, without going into too much detail on the package travel regulations. But you also have financial failure insurance and also trust accounts, which are all available to tour operators. Then on the ATOL side of things, so that's the scheme that's run by the Civil Aviation Authority. The ATOL scheme itself is there to protect consumers in financial failure of the tour operator, so the flight inclusive package operator that consumer is booked with. They would get an ATOL certificate at the time of booking, and that's kind of their receipt, their proof to show that they've booked this ATOL package. And should the unlikely but unfortunate event happen, which does from time to time, that the tour operator goes bust, that's how the consumer will be able to get their money back from the ATOL scheme.
So it's interesting, actually, when you mention all these different approved bodies and industry participants, because actually what these are not is tour operators, but through their membership, they might give travel suppliers access to tour operators and travel agents. And even then, when we say through their membership, ABTA, and ATO that you mentioned are approved bodies and have membership. The ATOL scheme is run by a government department and therefore doesn't have a membership. It is just a regulatory scheme which a government department oversees. And I think that's an example of the nuance that it's really helpful for sellers to understand who's actually buying their product and who can introduce them to the people that can buy their product, because the two are not the same. So interestingly then, actually, we think about the tour operators. So we've said that they have to be ATOL holders. They want to sell a flight and a hotel to get people off this island. That enables us to actually have some sight of who the ATOL holders and tour operators are. There are 1,600 of them here in the United Kingdom, ranging in all sorts of size. We kind of went through the data. And Danny, what was the thing that probably surprised you most when we started looking at this?
The change that's happened over a period of time. So I've been in the industry for over 20 years now, and there are so many tour operators that existed when I first came into the industry that don't exist today in terms of ATOL holders. There are also plenty of ATOL holders that do still exist today. Those brands have been around a long time. Maybe they're part of a different group now, so a different structure, part of a different family than they used to be. So that's one observation. I think the size and the volume of some of the large integrated airline tour operators is something that stands out to me, alongside those online travel agents as well. So that group is around about 80 or over 80% now of the ATOL authorized passengers within those groups. But also that there's a real long tail of specialist travel businesses as well that operate different models, some that are destination focused, some that are product led, those that are school educational focused. There are ATOL holders that specialize more in dynamically packaging, so maybe having flights departing the UK with one airline and then returning on a different one, the growth of cruise, touring that we talked about, and then loads of different types of specialists like sports events, golf, music, tourism, all sorts of different niches that are within those specialist companies. And that's before we even start talking about how they then interact with the travel agencies. And as you mentioned before, the advocates. So this is more looking at the ATOL holders.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. You mentioned these integrated airline tour operators a couple of times, and for our viewers, it'd be very helpful to explain exactly what we mean by that. So actually, for those who are UK based, we might remember that there used to be far more airlines flying out of the UK to destinations from regional airports. So I certainly remember growing up as a kid, you could take flights with Flybe, BMI, BMI Baby, all airlines that no longer exist. So there really only are 7 airlines that fly to more than, say, 4 destinations from the UK. Of these, 5 of them have their own tour operators, and these are, to us, the integrated airline tour operators. Because when we define what a package is and the performance responsibility they take of what's in it, well, if you're already operating the flight anyway, and then you also sell a holiday with it, if that flight is delayed or cancelled, you've not taken any more risk by adding on the hotel. Whereas if anybody else combines your flight and you cancel the flight, they've taken on that risk in a way that you haven't. So the integrated airline tour operators uniquely have an advantage in that they have the scale and they have a different risk profile to everybody else participating. So we've just had a question in from Claire, and Claire's asked, so the market has changed year on year. What are we seeing in terms of new tour operators coming into the market? What trends can we expect to see in the coming years?
You've got tour operators now that are ATOL holders that exist today that didn't exist in the past. And as someone that works a lot with entrepreneurs in and around the travel industry, it's really exciting to see that there are generally, in normal times, over 100 new travel businesses that enter the UK market every year. From the point of view of if you are a supplier and you want to work more with the UK travel trade and encourage more consumers to visit your attractions, stay at your hotel, or you want to build your business with companies that are growing in the UK travel trade, then being aware of these new entrants is key. This is something that we touch on through the report. We have all the data as well to back this up, so Daniel and I can work with you to really pick out some of those key potential new partners that you might like to approach and to work with that would be a good fit for whatever your product is. So that's a really exciting thing for me, that these new entrants are coming in to the market every year, and that's just on the ATOL holder side. You also, of course, have travel agencies that are starting up. You've got concierge businesses, the growth in home working that no doubt we'll come on to at some point during this discussion. Those are all trends that have changed, reshaped the industry. Coming out of COVID as well, I think on the travel agency side, they've done really well in embracing social media. And of course, the development of different social media tools has created opportunities now as well through all of the different social media channels. So that's kind of opening distribution in different ways that we didn't even know existed before. And the technology, whether it's technology that we've kind of had developing over time, thanks to the invention of the invention and probably embracement of the internet, but more recently artificial intelligence, and we're still kind of on the cusp in the travel industry of working out how that's going to take the industry in a different direction. So yes, in the past we had OTAs starting up and coming from nowhere and the massive growth that they've seen, but going forward, are we going to see AI completely revolutionising the UK travel industry? It's very likely. And we are already starting to experience AI being implemented in travel businesses across the UK market. They're embracing that in different ways. So I think that will then impact on these new startups entering our sector. The backgrounds of these people as well might be different to what we've seen before. We don't know at this point. But yeah, hopefully, Claire, that gives you a bit of an overview as to what's going on with the new travel businesses entering the market. And actually, Daniel, we've had a question from Helen about AI. So I'd be interested to get your take on AI and what you think the impact might be on the travel industry.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So by background, I actually studied mathematics at university. So from that perspective, where I have always seen AI is being very powerful at doing repetitive tasks far better than humans could ever do. And what we often see in travel is people requesting a specific room, a specific viewpoint, a specific concierge request. So operationally, AI can speed up some of those repeat tasks. For example, picking up that you need to contact this hotel and ask them for this. But what it can't fundamentally do is change market fundamentals. So what do I mean by that? Well, we talked about those integrated airline tour operators. For them, when you fly back from holiday and you're sat on their planes, they can play a jingle that reminds you to book their next holiday with them. They have something on the seat in front that says, why didn't you book your holiday with EasyJet Holidays? Actually, I'm not sure if EasyJet do that, but certainly when you land at London Gatwick Airport and you see the billboards as soon as you get out of arrivals and it says, book your next holiday with EasyJet Holidays, they have unique advantages that doesn't change with AI. The point being that under the package travel regulations, tour operators take responsibility for everything they put in that package. AI can't take that responsibility, and airlines have a different risk profile putting their own flights in those packages than anybody else does. So some things AI actually doesn't disrupt. It actually helps those businesses be more operationally efficient. But then you might look at, say, like the online travel agencies, and that's where it gets really interesting, because actually these businesses don't own the airline, don't own the hotels. So they're competing all the time for customers' attention. They're competing on marketing. And that's where we're already seeing the biggest disruption, right? It's the AI is completely changing the mix between social media channels, particularly on search. And so we would anticipate that the leading online travel agents this year might not be the same next year or the year afterwards. And that's purely because AI is disrupting marketing at scale. At the smaller end of the market, what makes AI really exciting is it can do some of the time-consuming tasks to allow these specialist players to really focus on what they do brilliantly, and that's looking after customers. So we're probably going to see almost three different impacts of AI. There's those who have strategic advantages that have nothing to do with AI, and AI just makes them get more efficient and grow. There's those who will be completely disrupted, and those who can leverage their advantage. And I think we're almost too early in the game to say who's exactly who in those second two categories. And that's why each year the report will be keeping people up to date on what has actually happened. But what is true is those integrated airline tour operators are pretty immune from the impact of AI in terms of the market fundamentals, which isn't necessarily what people would expect to hear. So, Danny, you do a lot of work with up-and-coming entrepreneurs. What's the questions people are asking you about AI and its impact on the UK travel trade that you keep hearing time and time again?
How to implement it within their business. So particularly if they are experienced, they've got an established business, the business has been running really well. Often as an entrepreneur, there is a lot going on. There's so much that you need to deal with when you're running a business. And of course, that changes when you go from an initial idea to growing the business. And then as it gets bigger, the whole journey that you go on as an entrepreneur. So you can't specialize in everything. You go from being really specialist in particular niche, which is maybe where you've started. And then over time, you become more of a generalist because you're forced to do that through the growth in the business. So those entrepreneurs are really wanting to understand quickly, how can I implement AI in my business? What efficiencies can that bring? How can it help us to grow the sales? How can it help us to improve our margin? You then have, I would say, kind of AI first entrepreneurs. So those that are more tech minded, they might be from the tech industry as opposed to kind of a native travel person, if you like. And they're really looking at the industry from the outside, thinking, are there ways that I can disrupt the travel industry by utilizing and harnessing the power of AI? So those entrepreneurs are in a very different frame of mind. They're looking at new opportunities, ways of doing things differently, thinking very creatively. And that's probably where the disruption in terms of big impact disruption could come from and really shake up the market. And then I think probably the one thing that's shared across all the entrepreneurs that I'm working with when it comes to AI is that they all have a curiosity and interest in AI one way or another. So whether they are or they aren't using it to a large extent within their business right now, because it's, I would say so far, AI has been more focused around trip planning, content creation. But a lot of the AI that I've been involved in and implemented within travel businesses is much more focused on efficiencies, margin improvement, conversion. So a lot more, I would say, kind of the back office sort of AI. But yeah, there's such an exciting space to be in. And I think from a travel industry perspective, the opportunities are absolutely immense. And at the end of the day, all that we all want is to enhance the customer experience and make sure that the customer has the most amazing time on their holiday, and hopefully to be a bit more profitable as a business going forward. Those are the two key things that you want to be utilizing AI for, and other technology that you may use within your company too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as well when you say about having an amazing time on their holiday, because actually fundamentally it's not AI sat on the sun lounger enjoying the trip. It's a real human customer. And where I'm going with that is, if we think for the travel service suppliers who are going to be selling to the UK travel trade, your business isn't AI. Your business is running the hotel, promoting your tourism region. And I think actually what we're seeing with the AI disruption is that the marketing is picking up from real human content on social media platforms. We're seeing AI quoting Reddit, we're seeing AI quoting LinkedIn, we're seeing AI quoting what real humans are saying. And at the same time, the clearer a travel services website is about what it is, who it's for, the clearer that comes through in the AI search. So it's almost a win-win when a travel service can be really clear on who they're for and what they do. That comes through. And I think what's really interesting in the UK travel trade is, we've talked about the tour operators, but then you've got the travel agents. And these travel agents are potentially around 100,000 people who could be advocating for you and your brand, creating real human signals with authentic content on channels that AI picks up on. But also, if we're not sure what AI is actually going to do to marketing, these are real humans with a network of humans around them that then can promote your product. But all of it comes back to, if it's going to be clear and pick up your product, you need to be clear on who your target customer is and who you're for. So there's some real opportunity for some of the travel service suppliers to sell through the UK travel trade, whether that's through the new AI models or simply by leveraging the fact you could have 100,000 cheerleaders calling for your business for their customers.
Yeah, that brings us nicely onto a topic that I really wanted to focus a bit more on, that's covered in the report in detail, which is around travel agencies. In the UK, historically, high street travel agencies, those retailers that had shop fronts, were kind of the key way that consumers would walk into a shop and make a booking. There are some super successful travel agencies that still exist on the high street nowadays. But what has changed over time, largely thanks to technology, the internet, and so on, is there's been a big growth in call centers. There's been the kind of advent and development of home working agencies over the last 30, 35 years or so. There's consortia that are kind of attached to this, hybrid models that have come off the back of it, online travel agents as well. So it's really complex. But again, I think from a travel industry perspective, someone that works in it, super exciting and interesting to learn more about. So I just wanted to hand over to you, really. Do you want to give us any insights that you've got into that market that might be useful for the audience today?
Yeah, so I think it's all around remembering that people buy people. So ultimately, no matter how complex those layers are, whether that's the consortia, the host agencies, the model, that ultimately it's a named travel agent at the end of the day that is selling to that customer through the UK travel trade. And if you're the travel service supplier and you want them to be promoting your product, that's a real opportunity if you can get to them. So it's really about understanding what those layers are, creating awareness of when you should be talking about that product and why, and pushing that out. So it's a real opportunity. And yes, there's been an exponential growth in home working in particular. So I think I was reading that there's one host agency that now has over 40,000 travel agents in the UK. That's one host agency. Now, clearly, not every one of those travel agents can be doing a meaningful volume because there's simply not enough customers for them all to do that. But some of them will be, and all of them have friends and family, and all of them have that personal network. So even if we're seeing a rapid growth in new agents who aren't doing much volume, you've still got existing agents who are doing volume, who will close sales. But then the new agents are just as much advocates as the existing agents. So if you understand what their different roles are, your strategy with each of them will be different, but there's an incredible opportunity because of the exponential growth in the number of travel agents to have a marketing channel that is talking about your product in front of the right target customers. And that might vary. So if you've got a more specialist proposition, it might only be relevant to some of those travel agents, but the point still stands. The clearer you are on who your target customer is and what that product is, and when you understand how the UK travel trade works, you build awareness of your product for the right target customer and become the first choice. And that is actually something that even with the AI disruption is quite attractive. There are still though some very strong high street travel agents, so you could also do traditional marketing through travel agencies. So we do explore each of the different components of the travel agent market in the report. But what we really come to is this idea of travel agents as advocates, and a really powerful network of advocates at that.
Tour operators are your buyers and travel agents are your advocates. And that's, if you do this well as a travel service supplier, then that's where you can really harness the power of both of those to help to grow your sales.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably a good segue actually into what this report is really about. That if you really understand the UK travel trade, and we mean really understand, this is what this report really helps you to do, that your destination, your attraction, your business can increase your share of the market in the UK because you're super clear on who that target customer is. You've identified the right buyers, the right tour operators that can sell your product. You've identified the right advocates, and you've built this network of fans and network of advocates who are going to be promoting your product to the right people at the right time. That's the opportunity with the UK travel trade. And what Danny and I are very excited about is when we give you this report, we're not just going to say, here's a report, read it, and that's that. Because your exact need will be very different from somebody else's exact need. With every report, we're including one-on-one time with us so that we can talk through that report and explain properly what it means for you. And because understanding of the market is so important, we've also created a satisfaction guarantee. So if you read the report and you go, you know what, there's a part of this market I don't understand, give us 7 days. And if we can't explain it back to you within 7 days, we'll give you your money back. That's how confident we are that this is what you need to understand the UK travel trade.
Having that one-to-one time with us, we'll be able to understand your business, your proposition, be able to guide you on those travel companies that are the ideal ones for you to be speaking to, and hopefully helping you to maximize your potential through the power of the report, and also the support, the advice, the guidance and expertise that comes alongside that with both Daniel and I.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing we really want to do to offer everyone who's been on this call, something just to thank you for joining us for this time, is if you sign up in the link below, we'll let you know when the product goes live, and we're going to include an extra free hour with Danny and myself to really work through what the UK travel trade means for you and your business.
We really want this to be a tool that people working in and around the travel industry find valuable. It's not from an academic perspective, it's not an internal business document. This is something that's a broad overview of the travel industry from people who are working day in, day out in the industry, speaking to businesses that are highly successful in what they do. And so we really want to be able to harness the power of the report and help you to take those things forward, both in your daily lives as individuals, as professionals, but also to enhance your business and ultimately to be massively successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always like to leave with kind of one thing you can take away from a call. So we'd love to kind of help you on your next stage of your journey. Buy the report, join us for some one-on-one time, and really take your business to the next level. But even if you don't do that, the one question kind of I would have for you, and Danny and I have spoke about this before, is who is your target customer, and why are they coming to your travel service, to your product? Because actually that's the same question we're going to have to ask you before we can introduce you to the UK travel trade. Because the clearer you are on that one question, the clearer it is why somebody buys. And when somebody buys, you make money. So kind of win-win. But who is your target customer? Why are they buying from you? And the travel trade, if you can just repeat that question repeatedly and say, when this customer walks through your door, when you speak to this customer and they look like this and they want to go to here and this is the product, they go, that's the recommendation. That's the recommendation. And that's where you want to be getting at to really kind of drive volume with the travel trade. So thank you everyone for listening. It's been great to talk about the UK travel trade. In particular, thank you to Adrian, Damien, Claire and Helen for your questions. And for any questions we didn't get a time for, we'll follow up with you afterwards. Also, we're always happy to take questions, so just put them below and we're happy to answer.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. And I hope there was something in there that you found useful.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Daniel Hyman from Marcus Whitefield.
And I'm Danny Wayne from Travel Nomads. Thank you and goodbye.